Okay, so you wanted to jump into this whole racial purity thing, like where it came from, and if there's actually any science behind it, which I think is a great topic. A lot of people probably have questions about it, but don't really know where to start.
Yeah.
It's kind of sensitive.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely sensitive and but important to look the history and the science of it.
For sure, for sure. And we've got this text here that you sent, and it's got some really interesting stuff. It talks about the whole history of racism and eugenics, and also like DNA and stuff like that, and how that plays into this whole idea of racial purity. So we'll
Yeah.
just kind of like break it down, go through it, and see what we can learn.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the text says about all that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start with like the history part. The text talks about like 19th century Europe,
Mm.
and how that was like a big time for all these ideas about race and eugenics to like develop, and it's scary to think that like these ideas, from way back then still kind of pop up today.
Yeah, it's like the text, it mentions how these ideas weren't just like, theories. They actually led to some really bad things like forced sterilization and stuff, which is just awful.
Yeah, it's a really dark part of history,
Yeah.
and it's tough to think about that these beliefs are still around in some form. You know?
Yeah, and it's crazy how like back then they tried to build a whole hierarchy of humans based on race. Like some were better than others, and it's like the text says some people still believe that today, like they think they're pure white or something, which is just not how it works.
Yeah, and that's where the science comes in, right? The
Yeah.
text talks about DNA, like how that's passed down through generations.
Yeah, and like it mentions a study from 2003 in this journal called Nature, and they found that there's no such thing as a pure white blood type.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's wild. Like you think about blood type as like a basic racial marker or whatever, but it doesn't even hold up scientifically.
Exactly. It shows how like these rigid racial categories don't really make sense from a biological standpoint.
And how does DNA, like passing down over time, play into that?
Well, you know how DNA gets all mixed up with each generation, right? Like you get some from your mom, some from your dad, and so on and so on. So over time, like human populations have just been mixing and becoming more diverse.
So there's like constant variation.
Yeah, and there's actually way more diversity within these like broad racial categories than there is between them. Like if you look at all the genetic studies, they all point to that.
That makes a lot of sense. So like
Mhm.
the science is pretty clear on that there's no such thing as racial purity.
Yeah.
But then why do some people still cling to these ideas?
It's a good question. The text kind of suggests that it's partly because people are scared of change. The world is changing so fast, and these beliefs maybe make them feel like things are more stable or something.
I can see that. Like maybe it's like a comfort thing.
Yeah, like it gives them a sense of belonging, maybe even if it's based on something that's not true.
That's a good point. Like even if the science says otherwise, people might still hold on to those beliefs because of how it makes them feel.
Exactly. And it's like the text says some people find comfort in these ideas even if they're exclusionary.
So it's like a mix of social and psychological factors.
Yeah. It's like when scientific evidence goes against someone's deep-seated beliefs about the world or even themselves, it can be really tough to change their minds.
So what's the big takeaway here? Like what does the text really want to tell us?
Well, it's pretty straightforward scientifically. There's just no basis for racial purity or superiority.
And we've seen historically like how dangerous those ideas can be.
Yeah, the text emphasizes that a lot. Like the whole history of racism and eugenics and the harm it's caused, it's all connected.
So basically understanding DNA and how diverse humans are genetically, that's like the key to debunking these myths.
Right on the spot.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we looked at this text that explores the origins of racial purity theories, where they came from historically.
And we saw how modern genetics completely refutes them.
Exactly. Now, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Yeah.
What if we all, like, really understood our shared genetic heritage? How mixed and diverse we all are. How do you think that would change the way we see each other and the way we see the world? Maybe even challenge some of those biases we all have lurking in the back of our minds.
It's something worth reflecting on for sure.
It really makes you think about what truly makes us different and what actually connects us all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does for sure.
Yeah,
Well, that was a fascinating deep dive.
absolutely. I learned a lot.
Me too. All right, until next time.
Take care.
See ya.